How failure can be your best teacher. Choosing a strategy that best fits you. Turning the corner from a losing trader to a winning trader. Using a range of execution and scaling in and out of trades. Statistical edge versus trading psychology. All this today and more on the Futures Radio Show podcast with trader Julia Cordova. Futures Radio Show is sponsored by CME Group. They are the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com. For new show notifications, please subscribe to Futures Radio Show podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. This show is also sponsored by Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and FTSE Russell. The Russell 2000 is a key benchmark for small cap U.S. stocks. Be sure to check out the E-mini Russell 2000 futures symbol RTY and micro E-mini Russell 2000 futures symbol M2K. To learn more about FTSE Russell and their products, please visit FTSERussell.com. Julia, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Anthony. I appreciate it.
It's great to speak with you. You know, I would say probably about 6 to 8 months ago, all of a sudden I was just getting my inbox flooded with people going, Anthony, you got to have Julia on the show. Cordova, Crudele. I had a lot of those messages coming in saying we wanted to hear from you. And so I'm excited to speak with you today. It's actually the first time we've spoken.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really humbled by that. That's amazing. I don't know why people would want to hear me, but okay.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about you today. You know, and what I like to start off with is really just your background. You know, I just met you from Twitter. It's the first time we're speaking. You know, obviously know you're a trader. I watch your weekly YouTube videos, which are really educational and entertaining at the same right, which I really enjoy. And, you know, I'm just curious about your backstory. I mean, how did you get started in trading?
Sure. So I used to work in sales for a software company, and I was part of the management there, and I was looking for something that didn't require quite as much traveling. So I had been managing my own 401k. And really more than trading, I was just buying stuff and investing. And I thought, wow, this is super easy, because I had just chosen, things that I like. I liked Netflix. I liked Apple. I just chose things that I liked. And it turns out the things that I liked were the things that everybody else liked, and they just exponentially grew. So I thought, well, how hard could trading possibly be? Like, I'll just take, whatever I have in the bank, and I'll just, I'll triple it. It'll be easy. And so I was just looking for something where I could travel less and still make enough money to live on and do well from. So that's what I was looking for.
How long ago was that?
Wow. That was about 6 or so years ago now, I think. Yep. About when I started. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so about 6 or so years ago, you got the itch. Once it gets in your blood, right, Julia? That's it. Once you begin to trade, win or lose, I think that it gets into your blood. And you either love it or hate it. I'm someone who always believes that there's really just people that love this or hate this. And if you love it, you really devote everything you can to becoming good at it. So during that time, you said you started off with really investing. I think that's how a lot of people start. Talk to us about really that journey from you going from just investing in some things to eventually finding markets that you wanted to trade, and then eventually picking a strategy and then becoming profitable at doing this.
Sure. Well, I remember the first time I when I was managing my 401k, it sounds awesome now, but because of what I bought, but when I started trading, I had never seen a chart before. Candlesticks were really confusing for me. I mean, I really had to sit there and think about when the day started. I mean, and then there were different types of candlesticks, and that was extra confusing. And so Um, Really, my first entree into actual trading was trying to understand what charts mean and how people use them to trade. I still had no idea. I still thought you just I was sort of gambling. I would hear, hey, this is a hot thing, and a bunch of people would like it on stock twits or something. So I would buy it and then it would go down. And just so my first, it was kind of it was just a cluster of errors when I first started. I had really no idea what I was doing, and I just believed it was easy. So I would just look at charts and then just guess on things. And then when I started to draw trend lines myself, I would just get them absolutely torn apart by people. I mean, they were not nice to me. They said, those are terrible lines. They go through the candles and so forth. And so I was like, oh, okay, I don't know. And so I started to just replicate other people's charts and then try to reverse engineer how they got the lines and why. And so I eventually settled. I mean, I looked at candlestick methods. I looked at, shapes of things. I looked even harmonic trading. I tried to learn a little bit about everything, but I ended up settling for what works for me, which is channels trading. So I trade channels now.
So channels is what you chose.
Right.
And, one of the things I think is really interesting about when people talk about strategies, and I tweet a lot about this, and I say it doesn't really matter what strategy you pick because I think everything works sometimes. I mean, I could do a video and show you how great fibs would work
Yeah.
because you could just take an example. It doesn't mean that your fibs are going to work for you or for anybody for that matter. And I don't trade fibs, so I'm not really even advocating for that. I'm just saying that it's just a simple thing that it appears as though it works. And I'm someone who believes that you just have to really trade something that you can see. I'm a very visual person, so I picked my strategy because I like support and resistance levels. I like to watch reactions visually. That worked very well for me, and I believe that I may not have the best statistical edge with that, but because I believe in it, no matter what happens, I'm going to find a way to make it work. Is that kind of how it worked for you too?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. It I realized that every time I would stop out, it would be just right before something reversed in my direction, and so I was like, how can this possibly be? And so finally, when I started using channel lines, for me, it was about giving it some leeway under which I would have stopped out before. And I don't know how, but just suddenly everything came together, and it really was a flip of a switch. I mean, I just did everything wrong, and I was recording it all, and I was like, wow, how can one person be so terrible and make so many mistakes over and over? And so I would just then, I finally just scrapped everything I was doing. I started doing my channels method, and I stopped listening to everyone else. And so for me, that was key. I stopped thinking that I was wrong because somebody else said I was wrong. I stopped listening to people who said there were hot things and here's what you should do, because everyone has a different take on it. And there's always wrong things that I'll be doing according to someone else. So I just got into a tunnel with myself and tried to figure out a way that I could be consistent. And that for me was the key, is just being consistent, not huge wins all the time or anything like that, just having a set of rules and being consistent about them.
Yeah, I believe that learning from others is okay, but trying to be like other traders is just a recipe for disaster. I know from from me being back in the pit, I was surrounded by millions, traders making millions of dollars, and I'm sitting here losing consistently. And I did the same thing as you. Once I kind of just said, okay, I'm going to learn some of these things from other people. I'm going to pick what suits me the best, what I believe in the most, and then just move forward. But kudos to you. I was surrounded by a bunch of people that were successful, so I was able to, have just really good mentors and just people to help me along the way. Did you have any help? How long did it take for you to get to the point of like, okay, I'm choosing channels, that's it. locking myself up, like you said, kind of in this closet of just you and your strategy to eventually turning the corner.
Yeah, it was probably a year into me trading, and I think I'm just going to say the first year was gambling. I'm just going to say it. So it was probably a first year into gambling that I realized that I needed to decide on something, and I started to create my method about a year in, which I know sounds really slow, but then I turned the corner pretty quickly after that.
So about a year, but what actually? How did you know that you were turning the corner? A lot of people ask me this question. Sometimes I really can't define exactly how it happened for me, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there was just something for you. Was there a moment where you said, you know what, I see this now. I may not be making a lot of money at this point, but I do see the path going forward.
Right. Well, right, exactly. I wasn't even trying to, when I got to the situation I was in a year in, I was not even trying to make money. All I was trying to do at that point was to consistently follow the rules that I had made up for myself, and I would consider that a win. And then if I could do that, then I would take the next leap. Okay, well, how much money did I make? And so uh, that was really it for me. Is I was simply trying to win by following the rules and the levels that I had myself. And then the next thing I would worry about, I thought after that, was how much money I made. So that's when I think that's the mental corner that I turned, is just simply instead of I have to make, this much percent or whatever. And I do have a business plan for myself like that. But at first I couldn't do that because it was a huge leap. And I would end up trying to gamble, just trying to get to my revenue goal. I would just throw something at the wall because I had a loss and I needed to get to this number. So for me, it was the mental idea of just having to be consistent in my rules, and then I started winning a lot more after that. And then I started to, I don't know, it was just very sudden how I started to actually win trades pretty consistently. And it was, I think, all due to all of my many failures. I think if I hadn't failed in every single way possible, then I would have loved to have mentors, but on the other hand, I don't. And at one point, I was desperate enough. I would have done it. I mean, I was just like, wow, I suck at this. I was desperate enough. I would have paid anybody any amount of money to help me. But the reality is, um, I guess I just had to do it my way. I just had to uh, try this one thing, try this other thing, and I could have done it a lot faster if I'd had a mentor that trades the way that I do.
Yeah.
But I didn't find anybody like that. I found people whose levels I respect. I found people who, if they disagree with me, I was like, uh-oh, this is bad. But I didn't find anybody who traded exactly the way that I do. Or wanted, or I don't know if that I wanted to, but I guess I did because, I mean, I didn't ever buy a trading book to even find a system. I never did any of that. I just kept failing. I just kept doing things wrong and then evaluating myself and saying, oh, okay, that was wrong. Next, that was wrong. Next, that was wrong. And then finally I'm like, oh, this is right. And then this is right. And so I think it was almost process of elimination. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did that because now I have, I don't want to say I have a great understanding of everything, but I know a little bit about all kinds of different ways to trade because I tried them all and because I watched them all and I have a respect for them all. So I sometimes do, if I'm hesitant about something or if I need a second opinion from myself before I get it from someone else, I'll look at some other way to trade. Like right now, I'm trying to learn GAN, and that is hard, but I want to learn it even though I don't use it because I like it. I like the math from it, and I want to be able to use it to. I don't know. I just want to learn. I want to grow outside of what I'm doing now and figure out whether or not it can be helpful to me.
I love a lot of what you said. First off, process of elimination. I can relate to that. I know a lot of traders out there can relate to that. When you start to trade, you're overwhelmed by the amount of indicators and tools and all these different things to begin trading. And it just is like you do have to go through a process of elimination and failing at a bunch of things, because I think until you ultimately fail at something, you don't really not believe that it doesn't work, because it's like you see something that works and you're like, until you try it and it doesn't work for you, then you could move away from it. And I think a lot of what you're saying is really, by losing, you built up confidence in what you finally started to resonate with you. You had this self-belief, you had this
Yes.
self-awareness. And from that point, now you're looking at everything going, you know what? Now I could see a path to moving forward, because it's like now you have this foundation of your strategy, your process. So you could handle watching what other traders are doing and say, okay, well, I get that. And maybe I'll use this, maybe I won't. But you go back to what you're doing. And that kind of brings me to what you're looking at again. It's you already have your process now. And if you want to learn something else, because you failed at other things, because you've put that time in, now adding something to your arsenal is just like, okay, I'm going to see if this works. I want to learn. And maybe it makes sense for me, maybe it doesn't. But it's not going to screw you up in the short term.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm just working on I'm constantly looking, and that's why I really love Twitter so much, is seeing the charts from other people, and not, I mean, I don't want to disagree with people, and I don't necessarily need confirmation from people, but I just really enjoy looking at charts and figuring out how other people got to where they're getting, where they are. And that's really why I even started the YouTube in the first place, because I wanted to just show what I'm not saying my thought process is the right for everybody, not even close, but at least people could just watch my thought process in a transparent manner, and potentially that would help them with their own thought process. I'm not teaching I don't teach anything. So I'm not like saying, oh, this is the way to do this. I just say, here's what I think and here's why. Here's how I came to that conclusion. And then, I appreciate seeing the same thing from other people on Twitter and on YouTube as well. When I see, like looking at Gann charts, looking at even Elliott wave. I don't understand it at all. I tried multiple times, but anyway, I harmonic trading. I like even candlestick method. I just like seeing what other people are doing and how they got there. And I just really appreciate the back and forth with people who trade as well.
I do too, but you said something that I totally agree with, and I think this is extremely important, is you talk more about how you're thinking. You're not telling someone what to think. And I think there is a big difference there.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, definitely, because I don't know what to think. How would I know? I don't know anything. I just say what I believe based on my own experience and how I got there. And then I really do like having interaction with people.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like, well, when people say, gold is a buy or stocks are going to go down, like they're telling you what to think versus, and I've watched your videos and I've watched you talk, is that you say, this is how I'm thinking, this is what I'm looking at, this is my process for it, and people can learn from that. They could take from that. And I think that to me is something I like a lot about Twitter as well, is because when I see other people's processes, when I see how they're thinking, that opens up my mind to see, okay, I understand where they're coming from. Because going back to you at the beginning, when people were saying you're wrong or this or that, it's because they don't understand how you're thinking. They're not actually getting anything from it if you just say, this is a buy or this is a sell. And I think that's, to me, when you have an exchange of ideas like Twitter or any place that people are doing it, the most important thing for me is how is that trader thinking? And, that kind of takes me to where we are with you right now. What I'd like to do is just learn more about your channels and just your process for it. You said that you had some rules and some things that you put together. Take all of us through that process. I mean, why exactly did you decide on channels? Talk to us about some of the rules and just how your strategy and process works.
Okay, so I finally realized that whatever I was doing, the algos knew what I was doing ahead of time, and that was what I would do ahead of time, and that was very consistent. So finally, I figured out that if I could find a line on a chart that the algos respected, and if I could take that line and move it around the chart and see that they've respected that slope multiple times, that would be a way to take advantage of how the algos might be taking advantage of other traders. That was my original concept. So I realized that this whole thing is run by computers. We're playing chess against a computer. I'm not going to try to be smarter than a computer. I don't think I can win. But if I can figure out what they're doing to get money from folks, then I can just sort of tag along. And so that was why I chose channels, just because I think conceptually it made sense to me. And I mean, clearly fibs are part of that as well. I don't use them because I don't want to add lines onto my chart. I know anybody like listening to this would be like, "What?" No, but I don't use them. And it turns out though, when I do have a lot of people say, that's the XX fib level. I'm like, what? Really? That's fantastic. But I wouldn't have known that otherwise. But anyway, so that's why I started using channels. And then I do the same thing. And I used to use also a bajillion, zillion indicators. And then I stopped using I stopped using almost all the indicators and just picked, I mean, I still sometimes use others, so I shouldn't say I never use them, but I just picked RSI as my go-to confirmation. And so I realized that the same concept of slopes in price being respected over and over again happens with RSI as well. And so I would then realize that if price got to a place where I saw some support in the price action, and if RSI was also at support at that time, that was a good time for me to get in. And then I also started scaling, and that was really about risk management more than anything else, because before, when I would just do a full-on trade and I would put a stop in, it would just catch my stop every freaking time. And so when I started scaling and expecting them, say, well, if I were to have a stop, where would I put it? And then buying the other two scales there, or buying one of the scales there, that started working for me. I literally was like fading myself where I would stop out. And that's pretty much what I do.
Traders, we're going to pause for 30 seconds and we'll be right back. A question I constantly get is, what platform do I use to trade futures? Well, I use TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. Learn more at tryttnow.com. RJO is a long-standing brokerage firm with personal broker relationships to help you learn and trade futures. To learn more, please visit rjofutures.com. Range of execution. Yeah, for me, that was a turning point as well. I used to be all in, all out, all the time. And range of execution, scales is something that I really like too. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I talk a lot about execution, and I think it's not talked about enough, right? I mean, like, you finally have this strategy. You found the channels that you liked. You talked about the RSI. But then you went in and you tweaked your execution. Is that trial by error as well? Like you said, you mentioned how the kind of what the algos, I want to talk about that actually a little bit more as well, and how that kind of determined your execution. Just walk us through more of like that range of execution and how you go about scaling.
Sure. So, well, if I'm trying to bottom catch something, I mean, I make fun of myself all the time, calling myself a bottom catcher, a top caller. But if I'm trying to sort of catch the bottom of a range or the top of a range, I am far more likely to be conservative and scale in slowly, and then add on confirmation. And so that's pretty much what I do. And so I'll do a third of the trade usually at where I think is the top or bottom. Sometimes and that's really if it's a trend change, and then add a third on confirmation or 2/3 on confirmation, or add I don't like to add it when something goes against me, but I have learned to do that. But what I'll do ahead of time is sort of calculate. If I'm only one third in, I don't need to have a stop. But then when I get to wherever I would have stopped with the full position, I know exactly how much lower it could go after that, where I would actually stop out then. So I do sometimes add when the trade goes against me. And I know as long as it was part of my plan, I don't have a problem with that. But I'm careful about that because, again, in part of my first year and a half of trading, I would just keep adding to losers. And as soon as I had a winner, I would take profit immediately. But I would just keep adding and adding. And, they say the trend is your friend. And that was a terrible trend for me. Like if something was going down, I was like, it must go up now, right? Right, right. And so I would take profits from winning trades and I would add it to losing trades constantly. It was the worst thing I did, the absolute worst thing. But that was my psychology, and that was just wrong. And I can see it very clearly in hindsight. But I thought I was getting a deal on things. I was like, if something is this cheap now, I'm going to be rich, and then I'd eventually have one trade taking up almost all of my capital because I just kept adding and adding, and then it kept going down. So yeah, that was bad, very bad.
This is one of those things. You make a great point about when people say these blanket statements like, don't add to losers. Well, I trade in a range of execution. And until that stop is hit, that trade is not a loser. Right. So my range of execution is okay. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I might get a trade that I've already had one or two adds to my initial position that are against me. And then it gets really close to my stop and I go, look it, I could add some more here. It's still within my risk parameter. And maybe this thing comes off and it doesn't get my stop, even though we're relatively close. That to me is not adding to a loser. If it were to hit my stop and then I were to not get out or then get right back in, that to me is adding to losers. I think that there is a really clear difference between the two.
Oh, I completely agree. And I even tweeted recently that, adding to losers is dumb unless it was part of your plan. And so if it's part of the plan, and also, I mean, it's ridiculous to think that no one has a drawdown. I mean, please, come on, really? Like it goes up immediately every time. Come on now. But I sometimes plan on being wrong. Like I shorted the NASDAQ recently and I knew I was going to be wrong. I absolutely knew it because I knew it was out of control. And I planned for that. I literally thought about where I was adding and subtracting the whole time, but I knew ahead of time that it was going to drop. And my own psychology is when something is going very quickly, I get deer in the headlights and I start doing exactly the wrong thing. I'll buy when I should sell, I'll sell when I should buy. So I need to almost, the way I do things, I need to almost be if I think a big move is coming, I do need to be positioned for that ahead of time. Or not only will I miss the entire move, I will screw the entire thing up like multiple times. And sometimes, if I've made 3 losing trades in a day, I'll just stop trading. I won't think, oh, okay, the 4th trade's going to be great. I'll just stop because that is a bad situation. I'm not thinking clearly anymore. I stop what I'm doing. I, walk the dogs, whatever. And, so anyway, yeah, but I totally agree with you. As long as it's part of your plan going in, I mean, absolutely. That's 100%. I do that.
That's the beauty of scale and range of execution, because I'm comfortable within that range of execution, adding to, when you said it, confirmation. And sometimes I'll get in at the top of a range or bottom of my range of execution, and I won't have a lot of confirmation. Then all of a sudden a little time will pass and all of a sudden I get this confirmation. You mentioned you use RSI or whatever it is you use out there, traders, and then boom, now I'm maybe in my full position, and then there's a really good chance it's going to be against me at that point because I got in at the top or bottom of the range of my execution. So to me, that is why I moved to scaling, because I'm sitting here going, why are you such in a hurry to get in every time it hits your level? I think because as a new trader, you just can't wait to get in. It gets to that area and you're like, I'm in. and then you just sitting there going, okay, you're waiting for this to work or not work. There's no really art to it. There's no, and I think that's a big part of why I moved to scaling.
Yeah, yeah, same here, and also just because I was having trouble keeping winners, and so like I said, like it's hard, especially when something does really well. Like I just want to take it off. But what I started doing is after a certain percent, and depending on how risky it is, I'll take off I'll take off some 1/3 of the trade between 3 and 5%, or 5 and 7%, or even 10% if I'm feeling cocky about something. But anyway, I'll take off 1/3 after a certain percent, and then I'll take off 1/3 at the resistance above that. And then I will let the last third just go. And so even if the trade goes against me and I'm still 1/3 in, it could go to zero profit. And I'm so happy with that. That's fine. And even if I just got the 1/3 off, and the 2/3 go back to zero, I'm okay with that too because it's money. I'll take it. Um, and then I'll just look for a different trade. But I find that scaling out for me really helps me to hold on for winners. Like, I mean, I had a few things this year that I bought that went parabolic, and I wouldn't have been able to hold all of that through. I just wouldn't have been able to hold it. For me, it's almost like holding something parabolic is as difficult as anything in trading. That's like the hardest thing for me because I just want to capture profits. But then if I do that and I have this sense of regret and remorse, I don't like that either. So just keeping one scale in and being like, you know what, it's going to go to zero, or it's going to continue to go up, and then I'm just going to feel good when I look at the account, and that'll be fine. That's why I scale out as well for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, you make really good points when you talk about scaling in. We talked about that, and then scaling out. It's really the same for me. I don't remember a time in my career that I have been able to hold a full position from entry to that full furthest target. That is not easy to do.
No, I can't do it.
I don't think it's ever happened, but I can scale out, and then when I get down to a smaller position, now you're sitting there going, okay, you're just managing that position. You're looking at the market. You still have skin in the game. I mean, I've noticed so many times, and actually a lot of times this year, where my biggest positions, where I've covered 2/3 of them because I do something similar, that final third, which is technically half the size of that other position, I'll make 2 to 3 times more on that position than I did on that bigger part. Because at that moment now, I'm sitting there going, okay, it's just, like you said, some things are just going parabolic. They'll just keep going. And this year has been the year of a lot of one-way markets. So if you catch something that's going, this is why scaling is so important, because to yourself and to me, and I know a lot of other traders out there, because it allows you to still participate in that move. And something that I would do, and I wonder if you did this too, is like if you did get out too early from a scale, or like when you didn't scale, all of a sudden you're like, okay, do you get back in? All of a sudden maybe you come in and you do a trade you didn't even want to do, because all of a sudden you're sitting there going, well, now it's going to go to that target, and then I try to participate back in that trade, and everything goes messed up from there.
I totally know exactly what you mean. That's the worst. That's the worst. And I find if I kept the third in there and then it back tests a support, then if I add and I put a tight stop on the add on the support, then whatever. But yeah, no, I totally do. I did that too. I'd get out and then I'd try to get back in, and then it would go down and I'd get screwed up and I'd sell it and then it would go back. I just
Exactly.
everything was backwards horrible. And then when I just had that little scale in there, that little 1/3 of the position, I'm just like, oh, then it just gave me some weird confidence that otherwise I
Yes.
wouldn't have. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
You mentioned something a little while ago that I want to go back to. I want to talk about it. Do you really think of trading as you versus the algos?
I think of it as, yeah, I do. Except for like I said, I try not to play them. I try to stand to the side and watch other people play them, and then, like try to just figure out what they're doing. I mean, that really is channels for me, is figuring out what the algos are doing. and they're not. It's not exact. I mean, that's why I don't stress about it. If you know, it's great if some people can consistently get everything to the exact pip. That's wonderful for them. I'm happy for them. I'm not able to do that. And I don't know that I've seen execution of anybody consistently that's able to do that. I mean, I've made some pretty good calls about various things on Twitter, and I happen to get pretty close. But for me, it's really just about, yeah, it's me versus yeah, I do feel it's that way. I just try not to win so much as uh, participate with them, try to figure out what they're doing, and then I add sentiment into that. So, I will absolutely scan Twitter for sentiment, and I've had to be a little bit sneaky lately because there's like a group of because like everybody wants to be a contrarian, and then I don't even know anymore. I'm like, wait, I'm confused. I don't even know if I'm a contrarian anymore because I'm agreeing with all these people. I hate that. But yeah, no. So I scan and I mostly just look at charts, and that's it. So
How much of your trading do you feel is statistical edge with your channels, your actual technical strategy itself, versus trading psychology and mental edge?
ooh, that is a really good question. So when I do my videos every week, I talk a lot about trading psychology, but um, I would put my levels, my own channel levels, over anything else. I have a lot of confidence in them, and that's just me. That's just me. Um, but not, yeah, I would put that above psychology, or whatever edge I might or might not have trying to read psychology. I would put that, and I use psychology mostly as just well, sometimes I use it to verify things, but sometimes it's just like if everybody agrees or if everybody's on one side of the boat. The thing is, it can keep going for a long time. Like a lot of people at some point in this COVID recovery, a lot of people were saying this is a V-shaped recovery. I think I actually said it near the lows, but I didn't expect it to actually go higher than I expected it to get almost to the last high and then kind of fade out. That's what I thought would happen. But it was hard for me because there were so many people on Twitter saying all-time highs, and guess what? They were all right. That that will bother me for the end till the end of time because I'm like, how can that many? I mean, I don't know if they traded it. Maybe they didn't trade it, but there were just a lot of people that made that call, and they were all right. And that bothers me a little bit, but it happened, so I have to keep myself open to that. Maybe sometimes the majority is the right way to be. I don't know.
Sometimes it is, and there's a big difference, as we both know, between making a call and then actually going out and executing it. There's a lot of. I could go back in this year and where I looked at it and said, "Man, I am dead right here," and I may not even have made money on that call because
Yeah, I
of
know.
so much that happens in between. And, that's the one thing with Twitter. We never. It's easy to make a really good call, but it's a whole other thing to go out and execute it. And I loved your answer for statistical edge versus psychology, because you go back to, and this goes back to you failing and doing things wrong and then finding confidence in something and your channels. And to me, that it works together, because your channels are where your confidence is, your strategy is where your confidence is, and that actually leads into that trading psychology. So if you get off a little bit, or whenever it happens, let's face it, in trading we could be off in our personal lives, or anything that could happen to where we struggle for a bit. You could go back to that foundation that you have, because that's where you have your confidence. You believe in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I exactly. And in fact, when I was shorting the Nasdaq recently, I mean, this it bounced off of my line to the freaking I mean, it was pretty impressive. I have to say, I didn't execute well on it. Did I take? I didn't. You know what I mean? I believed it would go through my line. I don't even know what I was thinking. But I wish I had. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I originally thought it would go lower than my line, or I had a different line I thought it was going to go to, but it bounced exactly where, in hindsight, of course it was going to bounce there. I see it now, but yeah, so it's a lot of times just seeing over and over again how well they've held up, and how it it's just how they're respected by the algos. It does help me a lot. And one time I had a really rough night for whatever reason, and I traded my way through it. Honestly, like whatever happened at that time, I looked at my screen. It was a really good time to buy ES, so I did. And then I was great in the morning, but sometimes being very methodical and process oriented actually will help me get through a personal situation, because I can just try and block it out and try to be okay, only trading now and not having interaction with people. Just that's what I'm going to do. And it helps.
You keep going back to that place to where, kind of where I asked you, where did you feel you turned the corner? And it was when you just shut everything else out around you. You sat back, picked a strategy that resonated with you, and then you built your trading strategy from there. You know what? I have to say, a lot of people out there that have been doing this for a period of time know that exact moment, know exactly what you're talking about. I too, when I'm struggling, I go back to, what do you call it? The basics, right? Not that we're not always trading the basics of our strategy, but I do the same thing. I just get very quiet. I sit back. I wait for my favorite look. I trade it small, get myself back to feeling good, just win or lose, but I'm just doing the right things. Just get back on good decision making, get back on, getting in some rhythm. I talk about rhythm a lot on Twitter. I think this is so important, because I get out of rhythm. Everybody gets out of rhythm, I think, in execution. And I just love how you go back to your place of confidence and to build, yourself back up. Do you feel that rhythm is a big part of your trading?
Oh, I do, for sure. It's
Okay.
kind of like, I notice when I review my own trades, I'll get a bunch right in a row that I was like, great. And then when I start losing, if I lose one or two, fine, whatever. But if I get on a streak, like three or more, I do stop, because something is wrong with me. It's like you're trying to get into the jump rope, and it just keeps smacking the crap out of your face when you're trying. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually will, like I said, stop if I notice that I'm. And it might just be statistically I lose three or four in a row. It might just be a statistical thing. I don't care. Just in case I'm just in case I'm wacko for whatever reason, I want to stop and just reset. Like I don't want to I don't want to keep going into that. I'm actually also very superstitious about some things. I definitely am. So I stop, I wait, I reevaluate, I try to get on the right side of things again, and then go forward. But if I'm on the right side and I can't do anything wrong, I'm going to keep going with that. You know what I mean? There are times where I'm like, I'm impressed with I'm not trying to be a, a jerk or anything, but I'm just like, wow, that was good. That was good. That
You,
was good. And then
yeah.
if I'm in one of those zones, I don't stop. That's for sure. I'm like, got to keep going now because I'm on a roll. And that's how I think.
I'm a huge believer of, when you're doing good, you just keep doing good, because I've just seen it too many times with myself and all the traders I've been around my whole career. When they're doing good, you just got to press it, because you need to
Yeah.
take as much out of the market as you can at that moment, because when you're doing bad, the market's going to take every single cent it can out of you. That's
Yeah.
something I believe in.
I 100% agree with you on that. Absolutely.
Well, Julia, this is so much fun. I mean, you have such an interesting backstory, and learned a lot about you, and kudos to you for coming as far as you have, and really a short period of time. I mean, 6 years you've been trading. That's just the self awareness you have and everything is really is really, really commendable. But we're not done yet. I've got some more questions for you to learn a little bit more about you. I got rapid fire next if you're ready for those.
Oh boy, so exciting. Yeah, it sounds terrible, but I'm ready for it.
All right, everybody. Our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Trading Technologies. Trade the global markets with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. Now with integrated tools for advanced options trading, cryptocurrencies, and trade surveillance. Learn more at tryttnow.com. Julia, first question for you. What trader has influenced your life the most and why?
So I'm going to go with Adam Mancini because he's a technical trader like I am. I found him, even before I joined Twitter, I found him on Twitter, and I think he's as unbiased as they come. I like his levels. I like the way he charts, and he's just a really good person, too, to help so many people.
What was one of the hardest things for you to overcome in trading?
And that is holding on to losers. Like I enjoyed holding on to losers and just added to them. And that was actually hard for me to stop, that psychology.
How has your trading process evolved over the years?
Well, it's gone from gambling to channel trading. So,
what is one attribute that you believe every trader should have?
Tenacity.
Favorite book about trading?
I do not have my trading journal is my favorite book.
If you had to pick a profession other than trading, what would it be?
I would probably go back into software sales. I liked that.
What's the best piece of advice that you received about trading?
It's really about trying to think like a robot and not a person.
If you could go back in time and give the younger you a piece of advice, what would it be?
To cut losers quickly.
If you had an elevator pitch me your edge in trading, what would you say?
Price channel trading with RSI channels for the win.
Last question for today. Favorite thing to do when you're not trading?
That would be spending time with my dogs.
I love my dog. I took her this morning with me to go get coffee. It was so funny. We got a little rainy day here in Florida, and she was looking at me. She's going, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, we had the early walk, and then I said, I'm going to go get coffee. I'm just going to run up there. So I get her in the car. We drive up to the coffee place. I get it. I come back home. It took me 15 minutes to get her out of the back seat. She wouldn't get out. She was back there snoring. She's like, it's raining out. He's got the air on. Let it go. I'm going, come on. Let's go.
That's so cute. Mine don't like to go out in the rain either. I mean, they're not like prissy about it, but they don't like it. I have to go with them. I have a dog door that they could easily use at their discretion, but if it's raining, I need to go with them and watch everything that's going on. So
we love our dogs, don't we, Julia? Just the best.
Yeah, they are the best. They truly are.
So, Julia, where can people find you on Twitter and also talk to everybody about your YouTube channel or website?
Sure. My Twitter handle is @Cordova Trades, CORDOVATRADES. And my YouTube channel, I think, is Julia Cordova on YouTube. YouTube.com/C/Julia Cordova, I think.
Well, they'll find it. Everybody go to her Twitter page. She's an absolute must follow in my book. Julia, you're really just so much fun. And learned a ton about you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me here on Futures Radio Show.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on iTunes. You can listen to all of our episodes on futuresradioshow.com, iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.